Okay, the second suborder of rodents that we're going to deal with in the lab here is the Sciuromorpha. And this suborder is based, of course, on molecular DNA characteristics, but also on some morphological characteristics. As with many of the rodent groups, there's still a lot of work being done on their systematics. So earlier we talked about Sciuromorphous jaw conditions, and the previous suborder that we dealt with, Castoromorpha, actually does have Sciuromorphous condition with the very small infraorbital foramen. But in this suborder, we're going to deal with two families. We're going to deal with the ancient family, the Aplodontidae, and it's actually Aplodontidae with two eyes. There's a typo in your handout. The family Aplodontidae, and we'll also deal with the family Sciuridae, the squirrels, the two squirrels. So the squirrels are very diverse. The aplodontids are not. It's monotypic, and the Aplodontia has a very primitive jaw condition by comparison with all other rodents. And the species name is Aplodontia rufa. It's one of the species you need to know because it's a California species. So, quick overview of Aplodontia rufa in the family Aplodontidae. So it's called a mountain beaver, but it doesn't look much like a beaver. It doesn't have a big flat tail for one thing. It looks in some respects like a very large California vole, although it even has California voles have a tail. And this thing doesn't have much of a tail. It's a tiny stub of tail. And these are found along streams and in wet areas in the Sierra Nevada, but also parts of the Coast Range down to Point Reyes National Seashore, and on up through Oregon into Washington. Pretty amazing animals. The bottom is not very bicolored. Fur is soft, and the jaw the skull and jaw are very distinctive. It's pretty much got a triangular shaped skull that's broad at the back because of these tympanic tubes. See the tubes of the ear bullae extending to the outside, nearly as far as the edge of the zygomatic arches. The other thing is they have this protragomorphous jaw musculature condition that is not found in any other rodent. And that's, look it up in the slides I gave you, look it up in the textbooks and the lab manual. But it makes this rodent very distinctive. And it means that the jaw muscles do not insert on the rostrum. They insert on the zygomatic arch here. And you can see also they don't have a zygomatic plate, and they have a fairly decent sized infraorbital foramen. And you can see it here in this specimen. I tried to see that pretty largish oval infraorbital foramen on each side. And they have very distinctive teeth. I'll try to zoom in on this, but I'll take photos as well. The teeth, the occlusal surfaces of the teeth are, the crowns are flat. They're flat and they're somewhat circular in appearance. See that tongue side there? It's fairly circular, but then they have a projection on the other side of the tooth, and it's on the labial side or the buccal side, the outside of the tooth on the upper jaw, and it's on the inside of the tooth on the lower jaw. It's on the lingual side. See that projection there? So they've got very distinctive teeth. There are no other, and the angular process on the lower jaw extends considerably away from the midline, from the alveolus of the incisor. So that's Aplodontia rufa. the most primitive of all of the rodents. Remember, there are about 2,500 species of rodents, so this is pretty striking. Now, for all of the other members of the Sciuridae, they have an infraorbital foramen that is it's very small and maybe slit-like. Let's see, I'll show you an example here if I pull up. Okay, this is a marmot skull. Marmot is a pretty big rodent, and you can see that small slit-like, let me grab a pencil here. We got this small slit-like infraorbital foramen here, and they have a large zygomatic plate for the origin of the mesenteric muscles that are on the zygomatic plate and on the side of the rostrum. Also, that's a distinctive characteristic of the Sciuromorpha, including all the members of the family Sciuridae, the squirrel family, is they have usually a fairly pronounced post-orbital process. See, this is the orbit here, the orbital, and this is a post-orbital process that extends out over the eye. The teeth structure varies depending on the diet of the different, the occlusal surface varies depending on the diet. So with these Sciuridae, they vary considerably in size and morphology. And I'm going to quickly show you the 12 different Sciurids we have on display here. Remember, there are lots of species of rodents in California. I've only got 36 in this lab, but there are far more than that. So this time, of course, we're dealing with the family Sciuridae. We just finished with the Aplodontidae. And the first two squirrels we're going to take a quick look at are antelope ground squirrels, the genus Amospermophilus. And there's the regular antelope ground squirrel that's widely distributed in the desert. And then there's Amospermophilus nelsoni, Nelson's ground squirrel, or the Samokin ground squirrel. And here they are. They look superficially like a chipmunk. They have a stripe, one stripe, white stripe down the side, light colored on the belly, and a mottled dark brown on top. And they often have a short white fringed tail, and when you see them running in nature, they'll often elevate that tail and they'll flick it as well. They'll sit and watch you. These are amazing animals, very hyperactive. And so that's Amospermophilus lucerus. If you see in the skull, see that post-orbital process, so you know it's a squirrel skull, but it's a small squirrel. So that's lucerus, and this is Amospermophilus nelsoni. It's lighter in color, and there are other characteristics as well that we don't need to go into, but you can see the structure. They're very different from chipmunks, which we'll get to very shortly. The next animal we want to look at is the common California ground squirrel, or the beachy ground squirrel. These are large squirrels, and they can reach large population densities. They're regarded as agricultural pests throughout much of California, and they're trapped and poisoned as a result. The scientific name, this is a long one, Otospermophilus beachii. And again, I've got a skull here in a plastic bag. I'm not going to take it out. But it's if you pick this up in the wild, you might think, oh, this must be a rabbit skull. It's about the size of a cottontail skull, but the skull structure is very different. And for one thing, you can see the post-orbital processes there. Here's on the left side, another one on the right side. The rostrum is shorter too than you would see in a rabbit skull. And rabbit skulls, of course, have two teeth. They have a peg-like incisor behind the main incisor. So that's the California ground squirrel. Very common species, very interesting species. Dr. Cooper and her students have been studying this species at the local national wildlife refuges for some time and are doing some very interesting work with it. The next species we're going to look at is another type of ground squirrel, but it's found in the High Sierra. It's the golden mantle ground squirrel. And you can see how it gets its name. It's got this golden colored mantle around the forelegs and shoulders and so on. Often extends right up onto the back of the neck. And sometimes it looks a lot more golden, a lot more extensive than it is in this specimen. But you see some superficial similarities here to a chipmunk or to an antelope ground squirrel, but golden mantle or shawl or whatever way you want to call it is very distinctive in these animals. And we're dealing with a different genus here now as well. This is Calospermophilus. A number of these ground squirrels, their genus name ends on Spermophilus, and that used to be a genus name for a number of these animals, but with molecular genetics it was found to be a lot more complicated, as we know, for many species. So that's the golden mantled ground squirrel. The next one is an animal you're already familiar with. I don't have a skull for this animal, but you don't need a skull to identify it. This is a nocturnal squirrel. Nocturnality is unusual in squirrels. And this one is nocturnal for a reason, so that it doesn't get eaten by hawks and so on. This is the flying squirrel, Glaucomys organensis. It used to be Glaucomys sabrinus, but recent molecular genetic analysis showed that this is the Humboldt squirrel, the Humboldt flying squirrel of the Pacific coast of the western United States, and it is it's the only gliding mammal in North America. Actually, well, there are three species: the northern, southern, and then there's the Humboldt. And they don't really fly, as you know, they glide, but this is a good example of convergent evolution with the sugar glider from Australia, which we've talked about. Again, Glaucomys organensis. Okay, next one is a big boy. This is the yellow-bellied marmot. And these animals, especially males, can be really big. And you'll see them, diurnal squirrels, you'll see them out sitting on rocks on sunny days up high, surveying their territory, watching out for predators. So this is the yellow-bellied marmot. And mottled fur and thick fur too on top. They have a short brown tuft of a tail. And these are herbivores. They have a yellowish belly, hence the name. Actually, this looks like a female here because you can see nipples. Yep, it says, Marmota flaviventris female. It says on the card here. Marmota flaviventris female. Twin Lakes, Alpine County, California. What date was this thing captured? Okay, you can see the measurements there on the tag. But I don't see a date. Normally there should be a date on the tag as to when it was collected to. Collected as the, oh yeah, there it is, 1968, 23rd of June 1968. Oh, it was killed by a car. So it's roadkill, and it was made a specimen. That's actually a great source of specimens for instructional purposes. Good quality roadkills. And here's the skull of this animal that we already looked at. You know it's a squirrel. See the postorbital processes. See the very small infraorbital foramina. So that is Marmota flaviventris. Okay, we're going to look at three more squirrels, and then we're going to look at the chipmunks. The first one is a big native squirrel in California, the western gray squirrel. You'll see these in the sea. Unfortunately, you'll often see them as roadkills as well. Often when they're sitting on the ground, they'll have that big gray tail curved up over their back. Gorgeous animals with strong bicoloration. This is to protect them from predators from the ground looking up, or on the dark color on top to protect them from aerial predators looking down, or terrestrial predators that are arboreal ones that are up in the trees above them. So this is the western gray squirrel, and you can see its skull too. It's kind of like the marmot, but not as blocky. You see the postorbital processes. And, squirrels are often omnivorous, and so they will They will eat seeds and vegetation and fruit, but they will also eat nestlings and invertebrates as well. So you can tell by their teeth that they're not strict herbivores. Okay, another medium to large size squirrel that we have here is one that you commonly see in cities around California and in nature in some places as well. And this is the fox squirrel. This is not native, but they're thoroughly established in California now. And so this is the fox squirrel. Oh yeah, I meant to mention the gray squirrel is Sciurus griseus. Sciurus griseus. And this one is Sciurus niger. Sciurus niger. Okay, and its skull is very similar to the one we just looked at for the gray squirrel. Very similar in appearance. The teeth, likewise, are similar. These are omnivorous. Many people consider these pests in their backyards because they raid bird feeders and can do damage too. But they're not from the West Coast. There's actually a population on the Berkeley campus. And look at the molt line in this species here.